this computer. All right, hello everyone and servus. Welcome to this webinar about our Neco regulation, our quarterly regulation to regulate the value of the Neco and our budgets for people, planet and profit. I'm gonna go through a short presentation about 20 to 30 minutes. And if there's any questions, feel free to unmute yourself, ask questions or ask them at the end of the session so we can discuss open questions. I'm going to start by sharing my screen with you now, so everyone can see it. The first slide about me, I usually try to keep it very short. So I started as a software developer many years ago. Then at the age of 27, I became an entrepreneur, started my first companies. And in the last a little more than a decade, I've started 4 startups and sold them. And Neco now is my 5th company. And I'm trying to implement my vision of a new financial system that supports the people and the planet. I like to bring up this quote from Henry Ford. It was from the 20th century, but it's still valid today. Most people don't understand our banking system, otherwise there would be a revolution before tomorrow morning. And that's why I usually start with some details about our existing financial system before I explain the differences with Neco and our system. So if I would ask you to invest in a cryptocurrency that has been running for over a decade and has lost money every year, where a cryptocurrency that's not backed up by anything, very risky, high levels of debt within the company, and in exchange for giving your money to me, I would ask you to pay banking fees, transaction fees, and conversion fees. If that was an offer to you, you'd probably say, no way, you're gonna invest. But you do that every day when you use fiat currencies like the euro. For example, the euro has lost more than 20% of its value in the last 15 years. It's a currency that's not backed up by anything. There is no gold standard. There's a higher risk of bank runs. We've just had the last 10 years ago in the financial crisis. And that's, for me, the most shocking part of it. The debt on a global basis is 3 times more than money in our system. So the system is practically bankrupt. It's a very expensive system as well. You know, the banks charge you fees, banking fees, but also transaction fees. Some are visible, some not. When you pay with a card, for example, you don't see the transaction fees, but the merchant has to pay when you pay with credit card or with debit card. And there's conversion fees when you convert into other currencies. So after the last financial crisis, people really started to think about alternatives to our system. And the first alternative that came up and the most popular until today is Bitcoin, a cryptocurrency from the first generation. But if you look at Bitcoin and how it has evolved over the last 10 years and how it has performed, it becomes questionable if it's really an alternative currency. So first of all, it's also quite insecure. Like in 2018, it has lost 75% of its value. And in March of this year, in the peak of the Corona crisis, it lost around 50% of its value in just 1 month. It's not backed up by anything. It has no reserve, and there's a high risk of loss, theft, and fraud. For me, for example, I had a wallet on my app, and recently I had to reset my iPhone. And after the reset, I reinstalled the app, but the code, the private key, was lost. So all the money that was on my wallet was lost and they couldn't restore it. So that's a big issue with many cryptocurrencies, risk of loss. Bitcoin is quite volatile. It fluctuates daily in price. And that's because it's driven by demand and supply, you know, the daily fluctuation of the markets, but also because there's a lot of speculation and manipulation going on. A lot of computers doing trading and trying to tweak and get some profit here and there, which is just causing a lot of volatility in the currency. And in the end, because Bitcoin has no intrinsic value, its value is more or less psychological. It's only what people think it is worth. And that can change from day to day. There's no real value behind it. There's nothing you can value. It's just how much people value and how much people are willing to pay for Bitcoin. And also, if you have used Bitcoin before, it's quite an expensive currency, there's transaction fees with every transaction. There are intermediaries that you have to pay, like wallets and exchanges. And last but not least, you also have a high cost level in terms of energy, because the platform is very inefficient and requires a lot of energy. So the latest facts that I have is that it requires about 280 kilograms of carbon dioxide per transaction. And when I read about this, that's where I stopped investing in Bitcoin, because that was just against my values. Burning fossil fuels, actual fossil fuels, for creating virtual numbers, that for me doesn't make sense in times of climate change. Albert Einstein once said, we can solve problems by using the same kind of thinking that we used when we created them. And what I noticed with many cryptocurrencies is they don't apply a different kind of thinking. It's still the same model in the background. So when I started designing Neco, I thought about what can we do? What do we need to change to really make a difference, to make a new system that is stable and a system that serves the people and the planet. So when I talk about Neco, people usually come back with, that's very different to the existing currencies, and that's true. We are very different. We differentiate us in many aspects from traditional currencies and from most cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. So Neco is a stable and secure currency. That's its purpose. Stable, it's a positive currency without inflation. So for the last 2 years, we've had just positive development and no inflation. It has a low volatility. And one reason for that is that we only change our price on a quarterly basis, not on a day-to-day basis like most cryptocurrencies. And there is no speculation, because the price of the currency is not regulated by the psychology of the markets through demand and supply, but collectively by all our users. And we call that system Collexa. It's the collective intelligence of our users. It's a secure currency because it's backed up by a reserve in fiat currency. So it's a mix of euros and dollars that's behind the Neco that is giving it extra stability. And we have a 10% minimum reserve rate. So we require a certain amount of reserves in order for our currency to operate. And we have protected our system against bank runs and bankruptcy, typically problems of the existing system that our system is kind of immune to. We have tested it 2 times last year, and this year we had the first real test during the Corona crisis, and it worked. And last but not least, Neco is a currency that's free of charge. There are no banking fees, there are no transaction costs, and there is no interest. And that's forever, that's guaranteed. So the key behind the stability of the Neco is the way we regulate the currency. And the difference between Neco and most other currencies is that we don't allow the market, the daily fluctuation of demand and supply, to drive up and down the currency. We rather use a collective referendum or collective regulation of the currency, and we only do that every quarter. And the steps are quite simple. So after every quarter, there's a quarterly report. If in that quarterly report, we report an increase of our reserve, then our price can increase. It makes sense. So there's more in the reserve, so we can increase the value of our currency. If the reserve does not increase, we keep the price stable. It doesn't go down unless our reserve is less than the 10% minimum reserve. In that example, in this special case, we would need to decrease the value of the currency. And then after the quarterly report, the next step is a Collexa survey, in which we ask our users to distribute our earnings across the budgets for people, planet, profit, and reserve. And that Collexa service then is the basis for the final step, the Collexa referendum, in which our users decide amongst 5 different regulation options. We usually have these 5 options. One is Collexa, which is like based on the initial Collexa service. Then we have 3 options, one that focuses on people, one that focuses on the budget for planet, one that focuses on profit, and another one that focuses on the reserve. And the option that gets the best rating amongst all users is the option we decide, and that becomes effective. So this is all done in usually 2 weeks. So we had our Collexa survey running from the 1st of October to the 7th. Our Collexa referendum has been running since October the 8th, and tomorrow is the deadline. So if you haven't submitted your Collexa referendum, feel free to do that by tomorrow. And on the 15th of October, the new price and the new budgets will become effective. So if you buy Neco tokens today or tomorrow, you still get the old price. If you buy them the day later, so the money arrives on our bank accounts a day later, it's the new price, which will be higher. And behind this Neco regulation is a very common form of banking that's practiced by almost all commercial banks worldwide, which is called fractional reserve banking. It works kind of that way. So if you have a money supply, in this example, 100,000 Neco tokens, we need to have only a fraction of that amount in our fiat reserve. So let's assume we have a 10% reserve rate. In that case, 10,000 Neco in our fiat reserve, so 10,000 Necos in euros, dollars, pounds, and so on, is enough to back up 100,000 Necos in Neco tokens. So if you have, at the end of a quarter, you have an increase of your fiat reserve by, let's say, 10,000, there is 100,000 Neco tokens that we can distribute. And that's the second graph on this slide, where we have the 100,000 Neco tokens, and then we decide how to distribute them across the 4 budgets. The budgets for people, which is universal basic income; planet, which is carbon offset; profit, which is increasing the value of the currency; and reserve, which is put aside for the development and for our operational costs. So that is pretty much what the Neco regulation is about, the distribution of the additional money supply that we get by increasing our reserve across these 4 different budgets. So important about these budgets is the people and the planet budgets. These are budgets that are always, where we always add new money on top. So there's already money in these budgets right now. There's money in Neco money in the people budget, which will be used for universal basic income. There is money in the planet budget, which we'll use for carbon offsetting. Profit is a little different because it's not money that we create and put aside into a budget. It's simply that profit is distributed across all existing Neco tokens, increasing the value of each Neco token and thereby creating profit for everyone who holds a Neco token. So if you hold more Neco tokens, you obviously make more profit than people who have less Neco tokens. And the reserve just means we do not use these additional tokens for anything but for our internal operations. We also, as an organization, we have to pay our partners, we have to pay our teammates, we have to pay for the technology that we use, and that is money that we take from this reserve budget. Okay, so that's the Neco regulation in theory. Now, in this session, I would like to go into more details about the current Neco regulation from our 3rd quarter. I'm going to go through the steps, to each step by step. The quarterly report of the 3rd quarter. So we had an increase of our reserve by about 12,000 Neco. Also, our reserve rate increased to almost 11%. That's an increase of over 0.5%, which is a very good result. Unfortunately, most of the investments came late. So we had late investments over more than 47,000 Neco, which came a day late because usually it's because of our banking system. It takes much longer in our fiat system to pay. So when you transfer money on the 30th of September, it usually arrives on the next day on our bank accounts. And when it arrives on the next day, it counts into the results of the next quarter, not into the previous quarter. So unfortunately, it would have been much higher if these investments had arrived a day or 2 earlier. But anyway, they count into the Q4 results. So by then it will increase the reserve. Then the existing budgets for planet and people. So the biggest one was planet, where we had a budget of over 400,000 Necos, we propose to reduce it by 50 to 100% to distribute that budget for our platform development. Reason being that it doesn't make sense to have so much in our Planet budget when we don't have an app on the platform yet where our partners can use it. So we need to focus on our app development first before we can start issuing and sending money to organizations to deal with carbon offsetting. And the other budget is the people budget. Since our first regulation, we have had a budget of over 150,000 Neco. We will start provisioning UBI, Universal Basic Income, in October. So we'll start with all our users from the second and third quarter that receive it. And there will be an additional budget for UBI in Q4, depending on the result of this regulation. So there will be an add-on for the UBI budget. And after that, we will continue paying UBI on a monthly basis. This was the Collexa survey, where we asked our users to distribute our earnings across the 4 budgets. And the result is that 17% is for people. We had a reduction of minus 69% in the Planet budget, 24% of profit, and 59%, the vast majority, into the reserve. So very good result. And based on that, we calculated different regulation options. So option 1 is the Collexa option. This is the closest one to the Collexa survey. There's a slight difference in on the profit area. It's not 24%, but only 18%. That's because we round the price of the Neco to 2 digits. So in this example, we had to round it down to 41 cents. So that would only be like 18% of profit, and the extra amount would go into the reserve. So we have an increase of the Neco price by 2.5% to 41 euro cent, and an increase of our reserve by over 1% to 12% of our reserve. That is option 1, Collexa. So you can, online you can vote for each option. You can rate each option on a scale from 0 to 5. And the option that has the best overall rating will be the option they will take and will be effective on October 15th. Option 2 is the reserve option, where we focus on strengthening the reserve. So in this example, we have taken more from the Planet budget and reduced the Planet budget by 80% and increased our reserve by 72%. The price remains pretty much the same, 41 cent, an increase of 2.5%, but an increase in the reserve rate to 12.3%, so quite higher reserve rate. Option 3, people. In this option, we focus on strengthening the budget for universal basic income. So we have 25% of our earnings invested into the budget for universal basic income. That's almost 100,000 Neco add-on to that budget. The same, an increase of minus 80% for the Planet budget, 14% profit, that's the same, and 61% reserve, resulting in the same, a price of 41 cents, and a reserve rate a little above 12%. Option number 4, the option for the Planet. In this option, we only reduce the budget for the Planet by 60%, resulting in less budget for people, and in a price of, again, 41 cents, but a lower reserve rate of only 11.8%. That's quite close to our minimum of 10%. So there's not much leeway in terms of reserve in this option. And so the last option is the option for profit, where we focused on increasing the value of the currency. In this example, the value would increase to 42 cents, so that's a 5% increase. That means that 25% of our earnings would be distributed as profit. The other values are pretty much the same. There's a little less in our budget for people, only 10%, and reserve rate would increase to slightly above 12%. So these are the 5 options that are currently available. The Neco referendum, as I said before, is active until tomorrow night. That's the deadline. So if you want to participate, submit your votes, your ratings by end of tomorrow. And on Thursday, the 15th, we will publish the results of the Neco regulation and the new price will become effective. All right, and before we come to the end of this presentation, I would just like to let you guys know what we are planning to do next, what's coming up in the next quarter. So as you know, we're still in the process of regulating the Neco, so the new price will become effective in 2 days, October 15th. We are looking forward to an increased budget for people, so more UBI. That's important because that's what we're going to start next. In October, we want to start provisioning universal basic income for all users that have registered before September 30th. They are eligible for receiving UBI for the first and the second and the third quarter. So it will be 6 months of universal basic income that we're paying out. And all other users who have registered after September 30th, they will be eligible for receiving UBI in this quarter. From this month on, we will start provisioning the UBI on a monthly basis. So everyone who signs up for UBI receive it monthly. And please stay tuned. So this will happen after the regulation. So we will send out another email where you can submit your UBI application. And keep in mind, anybody can apply. You don't have to invest, but obviously if you invest, you usually get more karma. More karma means more universal basic income. Another thing we want to launch in this quarter is the carbon-free tax. That's our carbon offset program. The price for the ton of carbon is 20 euros. That's currently the value regulated by Collexa. We're providing flat rates where you can choose one of the 3 flat rates for the average person, a vegetarian, and a frequent flyer, or you can calculate your individual carbon-free tax by using our carbon footprint calculator. So our carbon-free tax is a voluntary donation to a nonprofit organization, so you can deduct it from your actual tax return. You don't have to pay, but obviously you earn karma, and more karma results in more universal basic income. 2 other things that will come in this quarter is a Neco referral program. So we want to grow in our private sales. We want to get more people to join in order for us to increase our reserves and to increase the value. And so we would like to offer a referral program, meaning rewards for people who refer other people, Neco to other people. And last but not least, we're going to publish the Neco Constitution. The Neco Constitution is the document that describes how our system operates and the core values of our organization and of our project. It's a collectively managed constitution, so our members will be able to add, change, or delete articles in that constitution. So it's something that we write collectively and we manage collectively. And we're really excited to release the constitution in the next quarter. This is our roadmap. I think I've shown that in our last webinar 2 weeks ago. So we started in 2018 with a design. Last year we did a test of the entire system. Now we're in the prototyping phase, running a prototype technology. As most of you probably know, it's still based on a Google Cloud solution. So it's not the final app, not the final platform, but it's a good prototype that helps us to test all these various components of our system before we start with the development phase and the rollout of the Neco app, which is planned for next year. We're currently in the private sales phase, so we only offer Neco tokens to people that we know, friends and known investors. It's not public yet, but that will change with our Neco ICO in next year, 21. And after that, we plan to run 2 other ICOs, initial coin offerings. One is for StackChain in 21. StackChain is our carbon neutral blockchain technology that we are developing. And Collexa in 23. Collexa is our system of collective intelligence. All of these technologies are being developed internally first. And once we decide to go public and offer them to the market as separate products, as technologies that other companies can use, we will do that through an ICO process. And when the app is ready and our platform is up and running next year, that's how we envision the setup process for our currency. The only thing you have to do is you download the app, you open an account with us, you pay in fiat currency, euro for example, and exchange it for Neco, and then you can pay anyone with Neco who accepts it. You can invite your friends, and if you invite your friends, you also can receive a referral bonus. So we want to make it very easy to change from the existing system to a new system, and this is the way, just downloading an app, installing it, and signing up, and you are operating a new financial system. If you haven't registered, here are the links for the registration, and then the email addresses if you want to invest, if you want to pay your carbon-free tax, or if you want to join our nonprofit organization here in Germany, or even if you want to work for Neco because you're interested, jobs@neco.finance. You can find us on social media, Facebook, Instagram. Our tag is Neco Currency. All right, so thank you for your time. I'm done with my presentation. Are there any questions? I'm gonna stop the share and open up the video session. So if anyone wants to talk, just unmute your phone and ask questions or write anything into the chat. All right, very good. Seems there are no questions. Means I have answered all questions. That's a good thing to have. And thank you very much for your time. And have a good evening and see you soon.